And welcome back to a fresh episode of the Business Growth Show. Excited to be joined by Danny Levy today. Danny is the Managing Director, APAC, for Worldwide Business Research. He's from the UK and he's been living in and working in Singapore for the last 10 years. He's also host of the Digital Transformation and Leadership podcast and regularly speaks and moderates at digital and live in-person events. Danny, a very warm welcome, sir. How's it going?
Very well, Sam. Very well. How are you?
Yeah, all good on this end, mate. Looking forward to our chat today. I think it's going to be quite an interesting one, really. We're looking at a step-by-step process, a 5-step process to be precise, on how we can go from being a sales rep to a directorship level. And this is something a bit close to my heart, obviously close to yours as well, being an MD, Danny. As I know, I've worked my way through the trenches a fair bit, even though we're a smaller company in comparison to yours. Kind of worked at all ends of the spectrums, really, being a jack of all trades, SDR, kind of working away doing the cold calls, kind of working my way up to account manager, kind of business development manager level, then a kind of sales manager position, working at managing a couple reps, and then eventually going on to be a co-owner and an MD. Kind of like yourself. So it's going to be an exciting one. And I think there's going to be lots of really actionable tips we can share or across if people really are ready for the role. And most importantly, how they can actually make that progress, both with their self, the mindset side of things, and the actual kind of work they need to put in to make it happen. So yeah, would love to jump straight into it, Danny. And let's get started with the 5-step guide you've kindly put together for us, sir.
Very good. It sounds like we're going to be able to have some good back and forth today, Sam. I like that.
Definitely.
Yeah. So I'll talk you through the first step, and then it would be good to kind of get your thoughts. But I've got 5 points here that I'll talk you through. So the first point really is the most important thing, I think, in the beginning. And you obviously can't rush moving up the career ladder, as much as everyone wants those kind of shortcuts to success, those hacks. They want to be able to kind of jump up as quickly as possible. It doesn't really happen. You know, from my experience, you'll only move up and progress when you're ready. So I think the most important thing when you're starting out in a sales position, or maybe you're moving to a new company, I think from day one, the best salespeople, they always want to prove themselves. They want to get those sales on the board as quickly as possible. I mean, the best salespeople I work with always do. Sometimes that's to their own detriment, I would say, because people need to actually do the training. They need to get their head around things. They need to, get fully to grips with the product. So you should take your time, but always when I've worked with good salespeople, it's funny, they want to get that first sale in the first week, which sometimes isn't practical. But anyway, I mean. So what you need to do really is you need to master the fundamentals. That's my first point. Yeah. And there's a few things in here that I've seen the best salespeople do that do move up. It's taking it really seriously. I think for some, sales isn't a serious role, especially if you're young. Some people may see it as a stopgap. But if you want to move up the ranks, you've got to take it really seriously. So that means, showing up every day, managing your time effectively, making sure that you work towards achieving and hitting your KPIs, especially in the beginning. I think there's a lot of conversation around, well, do KPIs really matter? If you're doing what you're accountable for, or you're smashing your targets, does it really matter if you're not hitting your KPIs? I would say in the beginning it does. So, making sure that you're hitting your KPIs, that you're getting your props out, that you're putting everything in the CRM, working towards achieving your targets. And it's not hitting a target one month and then missing it the next month. I think in the beginning, you should be hitting and exceeding your targets every single month. And the kind of grade A people, the top people, what I always see them do in the team is they seek out the other top performers. Yeah. And they ask them, what makes you so good? Why are you doing so well? What is it that you do every single day? And then those kind of top performers, those people that are really self-aware, they make sure that they replicate that, and then they exceed it. They go beyond that. So it's really being self-aware. It's being humble as well. You've got to be humble.
Definitely.
And that's throughout your career, right? You have to be humble. Even me, I'm at the top of the ladder at the moment, but there's a lot of value even now, young people coming into the team, they've got different experiences to me. It's all about sometimes reverse mentoring, right? Me going to them and saying, well, what kind of a lens would you put on this? How would you do this? And just being open to that and not having an ego. Again, I think if you want to move up the level, that's super important. And then also, around mastering the fundamentals, it's having that growth mindset. So having that hunger to learn, but also apply your learning. So I know there's a lot of conversation around podcasts, listening to podcasts, doing trainings and reading books and all that kind of stuff, which is great. I think you need to do that as well. But then it's also about applying those learnings as well, which I think is super important, and pushing your colleagues forward. And in the beginning as well, building your domain expertise, becoming an expert. So buyers now are really educated. They're super educated at the moment, buyers. You can find a lot of things out by going to someone's website, reading about the product, looking at reviews. By the time they actually sometimes get to you, if it's an inbound lead, sure, they're very educated, right? They want to deal with educated sellers. So again, I think if you want to move up the ladder, be as educated as possible, be that expert. And through the health pandemic as well, buyers they have a bit more fear than they used to. So I think, as a seller, you need to be able to guide them through the buying process. And if you want to move up the career ladder, don't limit your learnings to sales, right? Look at leadership, look at marketing, look at production, whatever it is within your own respective organization, and talk to these colleagues in these departments to figure out what it is they're doing and how you can make the biggest impact to what they're doing, how they can make the biggest impact to what you're doing. Again, just having that open mindset, don't work in a silo. That's all really, really important. So I think that's kind of like the key stuff for me around kind of mastering the fundamentals.
There's so many ways I could take this, Danny. So some awesome tips there, right from kind of entry level sales rep position to perhaps more senior that we've covered there. And if I had all these tips when I first started out, I'm sure my performance would be a heck of a lot better. Because I remember it takes me back to one of the first sales calls I've made. I think I've probably said this on the show, perhaps in one of the earlier episodes. But when I first started working for WebChoice, when I literally was an entry-level sales rep, I got handed an inbound lead that came through from one of the companies we used to purchase leads off. And literally, I had no clue what I was doing. I was sweating away. I was proper nervous. I'm in an R-ing, didn't really know what to say. Answered the call, and it was someone that wanted a website that was basically the equivalent of LinkedIn. And they were asking all these questions like, Sam, can the website do this? Sam, can the website do that? I need it to do X, Y, and Z. So it basically needs to be one of the most complex websites ever. I yes-manned my way through the whole call, said, yeah, that's fine, because I was so nervous, didn't know what else to say. And ended up selling this huge web platform for about 500 quid. Luckily, over time, he let us move that budget into other projects. So we didn't need to deliver it. So I escaped that absolute disaster. But it takes me back, man. But yeah, so many good points around time management, around KPIs, which I kind of agree with at the start. I think as long as you've got solid management around you that are actually entailing sensible KPIs, whether it's do this many dials a day, do this many emails, follow up this many clients, as long as they're not ridiculous, then yeah, it makes sense to stick to those, because they put them in place for a reason. And it's probably going to help you, especially on your first few days. Seeking out top performers, really like that. That's something, and that links into the fact that you've said about being humble, which again, something I wish I did a lot more in my earlier days, because I know when I was younger, I like to think that I was always right. When it turns out, like you say, when you take a step back and you actually ask for other people's perspective, be it people from your sales or your marketing team on what they think on X, Y, and Z, or if you've got an issue, asking for their opinion, just helps so much. And like you said, allows you to look at things through another lens.
Check your ego at the door. It doesn't do you any good.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. So it's sometimes you've got to learn the hard way on those kind of things.
You do.
So seeking out top performers. So especially if you're new to sales and you've got performers in there that are topping the sales boards, topping the leaderboards, then obviously they know what they're doing, or they're doing something right. So say, look, can I set up a meeting with you? Can I take you out for a beer? Can we grab some lunch, and can I pick your brains on what you're doing, or how you're learning, or how you're making this happen? And then, like you said, the growth mindset, reading books, reading podcasts, or listening to podcasts. Or another thing I'd add to that is understanding which way you consume content the best. So which I've said before, I'm very, very, very slow at reading. So I like to do podcasts. So work out what works best for you, whether it's consuming via video or checking out books or audio. So yeah, really love those points, dude. All right, let's mix it up. Let's get to number 2, sir.
Very good. Good recap. So number 2 is a bit of a mashup, but the 2 things within number 2. So there's a bonus point in there. But I think the first thing is that you need to lead by example. You might not have the job title associated at this stage with a manager or with a leader, but I think it doesn't mean that you can't be someone that others in the team look up to. So again, maybe going back to some of the areas in that first point, right? You're doing all the right things. You're the top of the leaderboard. You're doing things without being asked to do them. You just know you need to do them. And I think your senior management will notice this. It becomes very apparent when you have someone in your team that's just kind of taking charge and taking ownership and overachieving every month. You know you've got a real kind of top quality person on your hand. So I would say, lead without being told that you need to lead and take initiative. Your superiors will be so happy that you've got someone in the team that does that, right? And maybe goes off, and if they've got an idea, maybe they go off and test the idea and get some proof points and get some proof of concept, and then they come back and propose the idea. I mean, that's amazing. You've got someone good on your hands when they go off and do that. And then the other bonus point here is again, I get yourself a personal development plan. So either when you're going into the organization, maybe it's something you agree during the final steps of the interview, or maybe it's something you agree after maybe the first 3-month kind of more probationary trial period. But I think this is really important. So you sit down with your manager, and either there is already a development plan that the company has, but if there isn't, get them to put together a kind of bespoke, tailored personal development plan for you, so you can get in agreement with them. Where's your career headed? Where are you going to be in 12 months if you achieve certain milestones and certain targets? Where are you going to be in 3 years' time? Where are you going to be in 5 years' time? I think having that clarity and being in agreement with your manager on getting on the same page as early as possible, so that you can work towards achieving your goals, that's super important. And if you're at a company that backs you, and you've got a company that does that, I think you're in the right place. So then my kind of 2 bonus points for the second one.
Dude, I love both those points. The first one, I'd like to dive in a bit more depth too. So taking charge, what does that actually look like, Danny? So does that just mean, for example, we're taking initiative? So perhaps we've worked ourselves an appointment or a meeting with a project that's a bit above our head. So does that mean we're going out perhaps at home, doing a bit more research into the client, doing research into the strategies that we can tackle to perhaps win the deal, and then maybe talking to our peers or our management about what they recommend to help us structure a plan to win this project and win this deal? Or is it kind of becoming a manager before a manager and starting advising our colleagues on what to do, or is it something in between? What would you recommend?
I think it's in between. It's advising people maybe within the team that aren't as experienced as you, or maybe are, just how to do things. So maybe they can hear you on the phone, or they used to be able to when we were in the office. They can hear you on the phone. You might look at their proposal that before they send it out, and be able to give them some advice. Check an email or look at a subject header. All that kind of stuff that's leadership without being told to lead, which is really important, I think, when it comes to that growth mindset again. And the other thing is that you touched on there is, if you've got a deal or you're in a challenging moment, not going to your manager with the problem and expecting your manager to solve it for you. Going to your manager with the problem, but you've already come up with 2 to 3 possible solutions, and you're proposing those solutions to the manager and asking them to pick which one is the best one. And if it isn't, they've got something better, at least you've done your work ahead of time and you've shown that you're a problem solver. You've got that self-awareness. You won't rise up the ranks if you're always throwing problems at your manager and adding on extra work for them. Although that is the manager's job, you probably won't get promoted if that's how you do things. Yeah,
so bringing fresh ideas to the table rather than just asking for input. And on the second point, Danny. So personal development plan. Again, this, I really like that. So like you said, whether it's the interview stage, whether you're actually saying when you're taking a sales position, where can I get to in 12 months, 24 months, 36 months time? And also, I guess, even better is if you actually craft that with them. So, for example, one of the best managers that I had when I worked for a marketing company doing just data rental for telesales and leads, that kind of company. Although he was probably the best manager, but also the worst manager that I had. So he was a little bit toxic in the sense that he was a bit of an alcoholic and all that, without going into too much detail. Right. But he helped me out a lot, and he did help me get my mortgage for a first home, which we are now. So how did he do that? Well, he sat me down in one of the first meetings we had after I'd not long joined the company and said, "Look, Sam, where do you want to go with this job?" I said, "Well, I'd like to earn money. I'd like to do X, Y, and Z. You know, all the usual stuff a youngster would do when they're in sales." But he said, "No. Where do you really want to go with this?" So I said, "Well, in a couple of years' time, I'd like to have enough money to get a deposit for a mortgage to get a house with my girlfriend." He said, "Right, here's how we're going to do it. Month 3, you're going to hit this. Month 6, you're going to hit this. And by 1 year, you're going to have enough money." At the end of the time, we did it in 8 years. So we broke the target because he sat down with me to put a step-by-step plan into making that vision that I had at the time a reality. So being able to craft those plans doesn't have to be a house. It could be that you want to step up to management level. It could be you want to do something else. You want to be able to afford X, Y, and Z or whatever it is. But having that conversation, like you say, with your management, so you can actually make those visions a reality and put together a clear plan is so useful, and also shows them that you've got the initiative, like you say. So yeah, brings you well. Both great points, mate. Let's get to point 3.
Sounds good. Let's do it. So point number 3 is find a mentor or several. So get a number of business mentors. So I've been lucky enough to have several in my career, and for me, this was always people in my organizations, whether it's my current organization or previous organizations. There were people that were more senior to me. The good thing about them was that they'd had varied backgrounds. So they were in sales, or they'd had management experience, marketing experience, general management experience, and either they were direct line reports or there were someone in a different department who were a little bit more senior to me. And I was able to talk to them just on kind of a daily, weekly, monthly basis, just bounce ideas off of them, discuss challenges, learn from their experience and how they would overcome basically things that maybe I was facing at the time. Maybe I was in a difficult moment or had a difficult decision, or I was grappling with a management choice, and I knew I could always kind of go to these people and discuss these things with them kind of off the record. And I think the most important thing is that with these people there's no judgment. So you can share your problems. Maybe they'll share their problems with you. I think in the beginning, a mentor is someone that's giving you advice. And over time, it actually becomes a relationship where you give each other advice, because you obviously develop that kind of friendship. And I think it's really important when you're starting out to kind of find someone like this, find a mentor that's kind of willing to bet big on you and invest that time. So it'll make a massive difference in your career if you can find these people. But now, with social networks, things like LinkedIn, you don't have to rely on your own company. You can build a professional network. You can reach out to people within this network and build relationships with them. I mean, we met on LinkedIn, right? I mean, and I hope we can keep the conversation going after this. But it's people like that maybe are in different industries or have experience that you're looking to get towards. It's those kind of people that you should be reaching out to, and really you can benefit from their experience. So I think get yourself a mentor or several mentors. It's a super important thing.
And moving on that subject a bit further, Danny, are we talking about seeking out people that we perhaps respect or that have been where we want to get to? And are we talking about paying for mentors, or are we talking about people perhaps starting with, like you said, within our network, perhaps on LinkedIn, or perhaps in our organization at a higher level? Do we approach them and say, look, I really like what you're doing. Would you mind spending 30 minutes with me to help me understand how I can achieve X? Or how did you go about it when you first looked to seek a mentor?
So, I mean, for me, I've only ever had mentors, to be honest with you, within the companies I've worked for. So I've not really had too many mentors just through LinkedIn, to be honest with you, but maybe I'm a little bit older. But I think the way I kind of went about finding mentors was maybe going back to that first point, people that were the top performers, people that were the best within the organization, or maybe it was people that were kind of 2 or 3 rings above me in the organizational ladder, that had achieved a lot and were maybe where I wanted to get to in 3 to 5 years. And it was these people that I, just got to know really professionally first and then personally. And just make sure that I was catching up with them every week, talking to them about things I was facing and getting that feedback. And I think over time you have to make sure it goes both ways. You can't just be expected to take all the time and give nothing back. So I do think it has to develop after a certain point, and you have to make it a win-win for them. And that would apply to someone in LinkedIn. You can't expect to reach out to someone on LinkedIn and just take their time, and for them to not expect anything back in return. So maybe if I was doing it now on LinkedIn, I wouldn't maybe be going after someone that's super senior, like an influencer, because it's very doubtful they're gonna get back to you and give their time. So maybe someone that's within your industry that you respect, but maybe is approachable and might have some time to give you.
Yeah, exactly. Or if you run a podcast or some kind of interview series, just invite them on that, and
that's it.
They'll get free exposure, and you'll get the answers you need.
Yeah. Content-based networking. That's
the one.
James Carberry, our friend.
The Sweet Fish Boys.
Yeah, good book. Yeah.
Exactly, mate. Nice one. Cool. All right, that was good, man. And really good tips in terms of LinkedIn, in terms of working within your organization, and either leverage kind of where you are now, or leverage LinkedIn or social to find who you want to connect with and learn from, and make it valuable, not just for yourself, but obviously for them. Get some longevity from it. Cool. Okay. We're nearly done. Number 4, please, sir.
Number 4 is develop your people skills. I think it's no good saying that you want to move into management if you don't actually enjoy working with other people. I think a lot of people have this glamorous idea of management, but the reality is that if you're managing people, other people, it brings unique challenges. I think the difference is when you're just selling, if you're just selling and you're kind of focused on your own needs and your own goals and your own targets, it's only really your own challenges that you're having to grapple. But the minute you step into a management position, you're having to put the needs of others first. So it's quite different. And I think when you're in a sales role, right, you can take all the glory. You get the recognition. But when you're in a manager's role, that's not really the case. You've got to enable other people, and you've got to help them look good. Yeah. So my advice really is that, I've seen many times the mistake people make is that they might be the top sales performer, and they might be at that point now where they're ready to step into that managerial role, and it might be their first experience of management, and the company backs them. They say, yeah, okay, it's time for you to step up. It's time for you to go into the management role. But they don't know, right, if they're going to actually be a good manager, because the best sales rep doesn't necessarily make the best manager, the best coach. And what happens is that the sales person steps into that managerial position, and then after 3 months, after 6 months, actually it doesn't work, right? They don't enjoy management. They flop. Their team doesn't perform well. And actually what happens is that person ends up leaving the organization because they feel like they failed. And all of a sudden the organization's lost its star salesperson and it's lost a manager. So I think if you're in a sales position and you are in this position, if you're the star performer, my advice would always be to take your first managerial role on a trial basis. Yeah. Get everyone on the same page so that both parties basically say, look, you're gonna move you into this role. We're gonna give you all the training, all the support. We're there for you. But if it doesn't work out in 3 to 6 months, or if you're not enjoying it, then you can kind of step back into your previous role with no questions asked. And I think this is really good because it gives you a taste of that managerial position. It lets you experience it. It lets you see if you've got the attributes to really take off. And if it doesn't, you can step back in, and it kind of just takes the pressure off. And maybe the other thing I'd recommend is if you're stepping into a managerial role where you're not managing a big team, is to maybe keep selling. because I think, again, some people maybe miss that part of the job when they go into a managerial role. And I think if you can keep selling, it gives you that kind of player coach type role where you can kind of lead by example and show your team that you're still kind of in the trenches, you're still doing it on a daily basis. So I think that's quite important as well. And I think the other thing to bear in mind is that not all star sales reps should go into management. Some are actually better working independently on a strong portfolio, getting the recognition, smashing their targets. There might be someone that other people in the team look up to, but they're not the person that should be the manager. And there's nothing wrong with this. You just need to have the self-awareness and you need to admit to yourself that management isn't for you. You forge your own path, and you can still get yourself a personal development plan. It's just that plan may lead you in a different direction that isn't managing a big team of people. So again, it's having that kind of self-awareness, developing those people skills. And if it isn't for you, that's not a bad thing. Being the manager, being the managing director isn't the be all and end all if your attributes are different.
You've pretty much answered all the questions I could have had before I raised them, Danny. So that was class. I love the trial aspect. So I was going to say, look, how do you taste management if you are, like you say, a good sales performer? You've been picked out to be the sales manager, and if you don't like it because you love selling so much, and then when it comes to actually managing a set of sales reps, and obviously you've got then 5-10 quotas or however many in the team on your head, it's a completely different kettle of fish, right? So instead of doing all
very
yourself,
different, and you're dealing with very different personalities at that stage. Everyone's different. You'll have people in your team who are massive promoters. You'll have people in your team who are very controlling. You'll have people in your team that are analyzers. And when you step into that managerial role, you've got all these different personalities. It's a very different thing there to get the best out of your team, to be supporting, to be that kind of player coach person, lead by example, to train and develop, from a role before where you were just selling. It's so different. So yeah.
And on the flip side, definitely on the flip side of that, how do you keep especially if you're in sales, how do you keep the respect of your team? Because like you said, if you've got a smaller team, perhaps you can carry your own quota as well as managing a smaller team of salespeople. But if you've got a massive team and you're full on, so you're managing pretty much having meetings and making sure they're hitting their quota all day, and you don't actually carry a sales quota anymore, how do you keep their respect? So if you're not hitting the phones, hitting email, hitting social, doing whatever you do as part of your role to generate opportunities, generate meetings and get deals over the line and business closed, how do you maintain their respect when you're not actually in the trenches, like you said, doing the work? You're just telling people how to do it.
You still get your hands dirty. You can still join customer calls. You can still go to meetings. I think it's also having, again, I keep talking about self-awareness, but when you meet with your team, your role is not to go through their pipeline, talk about their forecast, what's coming in that week, and give them loads of grief and tell them that they need to close X amount more deals to hit their target that month and put loads of pressure on. And then that's the end of the meeting. That is not the role of the sales manager. The role of the sales manager is to check in on their people, make sure they're okay, especially at the moment through the health pandemic. There's a lot of mental health issues, and that's super important. You've got to make sure that everything's aligned so your team can fire. But I think really the most important thing is when there's friction points, when there's something going on with someone, maybe they're in a busy moment and they actually just need a bit of help. That is the time that you as the manager step in and you take work off them so that they can do what they're accountable for, and you do the work yourself. You don't sit in your ivory tower and just give more work and expect them to keep taking it and hitting their targets, right? You have to treat them fair, respect them, and step in to do the work when you need to. And I think if you do that, and you're also on customer calls, you're listening to their tapes, you're giving that feedback, you're giving them coaching, you're developing them, you're giving them their personal development plan, and you're working towards goals together, you should have the respect of your team, even if you're not selling yourself.
Spot on. Nice one, mate. Okay. Fifth and final point.
Fifth and final point is, it's a bit cliche, but it's very, very true, is that you have to believe in yourself. If you don't believe in yourself, you will not climb the ladder of your organization. So I think the main thing is that opportunities will come your way if you've kind of followed the last few points that I've gone through. Opportunities will be offered to you, but I think sometimes we're our own worst critics, and maybe when you're offered the opportunity to step up or take a role, maybe you feel like, oh, I'm not ready, or they've got the wrong person. But I think if you don't grasp things with two hands when they're offered to you, then that opportunity might be offered to someone else and you might miss out for good. So, for me, I was offered the role of general manager in Singapore when I was working in London when I was 25 years old. I was offered the chance to move over to Singapore to set up and run an office here. I did not feel ready, but I jumped at the opportunity, and it was one of the best decisions I ever made, because if I hadn't taken that opportunity at that time, who knows where I'd be now. And I've been living in Singapore for the past 10 years ever since taking that role. And that saying yes to that, it gave me so much experience. Yes, I was thrown in at the deep end. And yes, I did have to figure a lot of things out as I went. But if I hadn't said yes to that, I then wouldn't have started my own business at 27 in Singapore. And then I wouldn't have been able to move into the position of managing director at WBR when I was 30. So my advice is that you'll always feel like you're not ready. But the thing is, I think it's really important to remember everybody feels like this. I think a lot of people are figuring things out as they go. They're figuring out things on the fly. So if you're offered an opportunity, and clearly the person that's offering it to you believes in you and they believe you can do it, just take it, grasp it with both hands, and figure it out as you go, and learn as you go, and I'm sure you'll be a star because obviously you are.
That's it. Yeah, you've got to have that belief, and like you said, you're not always going to have all the answers straight away, right? So sometimes you have to learn on the job, as many of us do in sales, in marketing. We're learning as we go. As things aren't set in stone, so there's always things that we can improve on, which brings us back to the first few points on being humble and learning from who's around us.
And keep saying yes, keep jumping, right? I mean, you'll get other opportunities offered. Just keep jumping, keep believing in yourself.
That's it. And do you think there's ever a point, so if things aren't, looking at it from another perspective, if things aren't presenting themselves in front of you, so we're doing all these things that we've talked about on the show, we know the opportunities are there, but they haven't been not handed on a plate, but we haven't had the conversations with our management or director level team about those. Is there a way or any advice you could offer us, Danny, on how we can strike up those conversations once we've been putting in the work and we've shown that we're keen, we've shown our results through our efforts that we are ready? Is there a way we should go about having such chats with our management, our director level team?
I think if you're doing all of those things and you're a star within the organization already, I think you've got to have the ability to know the right time and the way in which you bring it up. I think when you do bring it up with your senior management, you can present the facts. You can say, well, I'm doing this, I'm doing X, Y, and Z. I think most organizations would have kind of annual reviews. Yeah. So for me, in the annual review, or maybe it's a 6-month review or a quarterly review, you should always be, again, agreeing in those reviews your key development points, your key milestones, and where people want you to be in 3 months, 6 months, 12 months time. And again, if you're hitting those key milestones, if you're achieving that, then I think it's so much easier to have these conversations with your senior management. So again, similar to the personal development plan, just get everyone on the same page, right? Get that clarity, get that transparency. That's the most important thing. I think if you've got the transparency, then it's easy to have these conversations. The problem arises if there's no transparency and you don't know where you're headed and you don't know what the next 6 months are going to look like. That's where it's more difficult to have these conversations.
Yeah, bring us back full circle, really, to talking about putting together the plan with your management team, the vision, where you want to go. And then, like you said, just present the data, present the facts, show them what you've achieved. And then I guess if they don't agree, you can always look elsewhere and find a company that will allow you that progress.
100%.
Cool, man. Danny, this has been an absolute pleasure. Thoroughly enjoyed the conversation, my friend. So thanks once again for coming on. Now, how can everyone learn from yourself? How can they connect with you? And what's the best way to get in touch?
I mean, I'm going to probably say the same thing as all of you guests. The best way to get in touch with me is LinkedIn. Danny Levy on LinkedIn. Shoot me a message. I normally reply very quickly to LinkedIn messages. I will get back to you. I'll accept your connection request. And I have a podcast. It's called Digital Transformation and Leadership. If you listen to podcasts, I think you can find them here. Same as you, Sam. And yeah, I'd love it if you check out the podcast and give me a listen.
Cool, dude. If you could pick just one digital marketing channel to generate business from, which would be your channel of choice?
LinkedIn for me.
Yeah,
it'd have to be LinkedIn. Yeah, it generates so much business and interest for my company and for my podcast and for my personal brand. It's really invaluable.
It's the B2B go-to for most of our guests.
It is. Let's hope the algorithm doesn't change again.
Hope not. Danny, thank you once again, sir. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Sam. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. And if you enjoyed the show, be sure to subscribe to Business Growth Show, wherever the heck you get your podcast from. We interview business leaders each and every week to provide you actionable tips to grow your sales, make best use of marketing, and help your business grow. Thank you once again for tuning in.